movies, ruthless people and all the money in the world had a baby, it would be this episode of Dynasty. Hi, I'm Natasha Taylor-Bryson. Here are my top 10 moments of episode 11 of the CW's Dynasty. Number 1. Fallon gets an involuntary haircut. At the end of last episode we saw Fallon chloroformed by Iris, and this episode starts with Fallon coming to in some kind of warehouse with Alejandro, Iris and a gun staring down at her. From the get-go, Fallon is one hostile hostage. It was such fun that I think Fallon should be kidnapped every week. Alejandro calls Blake demanding 15 million in ransom. Blake provocatively says to Alejandro, "How do I even know you have my daughter?" We see a blade, we hear screams, and then the camera cuts away. Next time we see Fallon, she is distraught, doubled over in her chair. She slowly raises her head, and Liz Gillies gives a virtuoso performance of a mortally damaged soul.
Thanks. My stylist books 4 months out. 5 for extensions.
You're lucky. Hair grows back.
Not by summer. You should have shot me.
Alejandro and Iris look absolutely bemused. It'll grow back. Fallon is having none of it. Alejandro makes her go stum with, "If you keep talking, I'll turn it into a mullet." Elena Tovar and Luis Fernandez play Iris and Alejandro to perfection. I look forward to seeing Iris again. Alejandro is dead, so we are unlikely to see him again, but he has been dead before. As we've noted, no one is ever really dead in soap opera. Number 2, soap on a trope. Like any genre, soap opera has its tropes, and this week the CW spun them into a high-octane sudsy delight. A trope is essentially a convention of a story, so in romance you might expect to see a feisty heroine, a love triangle, a sexy millionaire. Actually, is a millionaire enough nowadays? Maybe you have to be a billionaire? In sci-fi, you would reasonably expect to see either aliens or robots or time travel or a post-apocalyptic world. Well, soap opera is famous for its over-the-top tropes, and this episode we get 2 of the classics, kidnapping and a lost child. Telling a story in a particular genre doesn't mean you have to be bound by the tropes. In fact, it's the subversions of these expectations that can be fun for an audience. Number 3. No one is looking. Fallon tries to put Alejandro and Iris on the back foot, listing all the people busy hunting for her. And we cut to each in turn, all very busy not looking for Fallon. First Blake, who is having his chakras fiddled with, although he seems unsure how to feel about this. Next we have Sam and Stephen packing and ingesting that age-old hangover cure, donuts. I particularly like the sound of Sam's first choice, the gold-dusted bacon cruller, as it's a sweet twist on my personal favourite hangover cure, a bacon sarnie. Finally, we get an upside-down Jeff in a yoga headstand, presumably contemplating karma. In the end, exasperated, she yells at her captors, "For God's sake, I'm Fallon Carrington." Number 4. Blake, the man with a plan. A plan no one is following. From the moment Alejandro calls demanding a ransom, Blake plays his cards close to his chest. It's not that he's not upset, it's just that he's playing it so cool as to be arctic. And he has rules. 1, a hostage is worth more alive than dead, and 2, you need to be willing to walk away. Number 5. Fallon as a hostage. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, in her book on death and dying, said that there was 5 stages of death: denial, anger, bargaining, depression and acceptance. Fallon seems to be going through something similar here. When Fallon first wakes up, she seems to be very much of the attitude that it is not her stuck in the warehouse with Alejandro and Iris, but that they are stuck in there with her. She's Fallon Carrington, goddammit. Second is anger. Fallon is most insulted to learn that Alejandro only asked for 15 million for her ransom, and then questions his ability to carry out the whole enterprise. Third comes bargaining. Left alone with Iris, Fallon attempts to win her over, which in true Fallon style means getting a compliment wrapped in an insult. How could you be with a guy like that? I mean, you're cute in a Eileen Fisher kind of way. You seem smart when I can understand what you're saying. You could do better. Okay. It's a slew of insults tied up with a thin, almost compliment. Unsurprisingly, Iris is unreceptive. Fourth comes depression. After Crystal's failed attempt at rescuing Fallon, the pair are tied up together, which renders the exhausted Fallon positively suicidal, mewling. She smells like she's taken a horse bath in patchouli. Finally comes acceptance, and Fallon works with Crystal and manages to escape. As an aside, somebody created a great gif of Fallon running through the car park trying to get to safety, and they've set it to the tune of Chariots of Fire. Number 5, driver and boss. When Blake gets a second call from Alejandro, he's in the roles with Michael driving. After learning what's happened to Fallon, Michael asks what he can do to help. Blake's initial response is a touch curt. Then he catches himself and says that he understands Michael cares for Fallon and thought their relationship was a good thing. Michael is shocked because he had no idea that Blake knew. Blake goes on to say that he considers himself lucky that Fallon had someone who was so good for her. Number 6, the boys relieve their tension with a spot of fisticuffs. Now, when women fight in soap opera, it's called a catfight, and I was wondering what you call it when blokes go at it. And Tomcat fight seems to be the right nomenclature. Thank you, Sally. And it's a humdinger that starts when Jeff says, "If you can't forget my girlfriend, at least you can stop screwing my sister." And the pair proceed to throw each other around Jeff's office until they're thoroughly knackered. Whereupon they have a guy post-scrap bonding moment and seem to get back on the same team, well, the team that's finding Fallon. Number 7, fantastic. Crystal took off with the loaded Bentley and met up with Alejandro in an attempt to get Fallon back, and it all goes spectacularly wrong, and the pair find themselves tied up together. Fallon is beside herself, howling just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. Fallon and Crystal may be tied up in a warehouse, but that's no excuse to let standards slip. The pair sport faux furs, Fallon in a red Calvin Klein and Crystal in a leopard print Theory jacket. So, in the second episode, this happened. So she grabs his hairspray and holds it out like it's mace, and the intruder turns out to be Anders. Anders' response to this is just to say that hairspray is a much better weapon when it's been set aflame. And Crystal says, "Good to know," and then turns and places the hairspray behind her, on the counter behind her. And right next to where she places the hairspray is a lighter. That's seriously coming back around again. I don't know who's gonna get it, but somebody's gonna get. And as you might remember from the last episode, Stephen's birthday gift to Fallon was a lighter. So you can see where this is going?
Fallon, run! Burn in hell, Alejandro!
Number 8, Tequila over Scotch. All through this episode, Sam has been stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yes, his parents have kidnapped Fallon and he is worried for her. He's also worried that his parents aren't going to make it out alive. And he's right. Alejandro, his dad, is killed. When everybody is celebrating Fallon's return, Sam is having a quiet moment in another room, and Anders walks in with a bottle of tequila so that the pair can raise a glass to Sam's departed dad. That pulse check-in hug from earlier in the episode must have unlocked something in our Kiwi majordomo as he pulls Sam in for a hug, saying, "Just checking for a pulse." Number 9, we find out why Blake has been so stoic throughout this whole kidnapping ordeal. It's because his first child with Alexis, Adam, was kidnapped as a baby and he wasn't returned after the exchange went wrong. Adam Carrington in the original series was kidnapped as a baby and turned up in season 3 as a good old-fashioned moustache twirling kind of villain. He was intended to be an imposter, but they liked him so much they kept him on for the rest of the series, and he wreaked havoc throughout the rest of Dynasty's run. So when this Adam turns up, it's going to be a lot of fun. Number 10, Fallon is standing on her own 6-inch heels. I truly love this scene. After the fun of the recalcitrant hostage Fallon, we get the newly self-aware Fallon. And it was Iris who got Fallon thinking about her dependence on the men in her life. Just when we think Jeff is going to shackle Fallon with an engagement ring, She turns the whole thing around on him, but not from a place of suspicion or distrust, rather from a genuine desire to stand on her own 2 feet. It's a quiet scene after all the bombast of the episode. She simply states what she intends to do and walks away. I was as flummoxed as Jeff. It was utterly brilliant. Took me by surprise. I think they want to make sure we love Fallon before Alexis arrives, and with this episode, I think they've done it.
I knew we weren't that ugly. I knew it.